Hey there everybody, just Marco here with another one for you. I hope you're all well. Well, in this one I'm going to kind of change things up a little bit because normally I'm going out there to shoot with the lens, the camera, the thing, and then I'm coming in here and talking about the thing. Well, in this one I'm going to kind of change things around a little bit, talk about the thing, and then go shoot with it. And I'm probably going to be going out to the Distillery District area of Toronto. I've been there before for the channel, and it really lends itself, that area, to shooting with this particular lens. It's a 28mm, if you haven't guessed from the title, and specifically the 28mm Tokina f2.8, and I call it the OG 28. And the reason I call it the OG 28 is because back in the day, late 70s to the mid 80s, if you were buying an SLR, normally it was bundled with a 50mm, kind of like this Minolta. And then at the camera store, the person at the desk was probably going to recommend that you pick up a wide angle and then maybe later a telephoto. Unless you were specifically into telephoto photography, maybe they'd recommend you get the telephoto next. But normally after the 50, they would recommend that you pick up something wider. And more often than not, that wide angle lens would be the 28mm Tokina f2.8.
I'm reinventing myself. I'm me and nobody else. Ooh, I can't help but smile.
This sort of fit in this perfect slot because unless you were a professional, you didn't necessarily need more than a 2.8, and it came in at that price point that was perfect, and it was sharp, good color, good contrast. Nowadays, when people are reviewing this as a vintage lens and they've got contrast problems, sharpness problems, it's often because it's dirty. They haven't checked for haze, there might be fungus. Clean the thing. So when I graduated from high school, my prom and everything else, that wasn't the last they saw from me at my high school. I decided to go back for a couple extra credits, you know. Did some rec gym, very stressful, golf, bowling, that kind of thing. I did, of course, some more art classes and photography as well, but the art department, they said, well, you're sticking around for another year. You've already graduated. You've gone to your prom. How about shooting prom this year for everybody? So on prom night, I threw my suit on, grabbed my dad's Minolta, his speed light, and his Tokina 28mm f2.8, and I shot the prom, and everything came out great. Everything was sharp, contrast was good, colors were good. So I know when you've got a clean lens like this one here, everything's great. Servicing this lens, very easy. All you need is a mini driver set, like those small screwdrivers that you fix your glasses with, and a lens spanner, as they call it over the pond, or a lens wrench, as we call it here, like a $15. It's the only specialized tool you really need is that lens wrench. It's really just to take the retainer screw off from around the lens element. I opened this one from the back. I was able to get to all the haze and dirt from the back. You can also open up the front by prying the beauty ring here in the front. Then all you need is some optical cleaning fluid. So if you've got a sensor cleaning kit from Ellipse or whoever. So some people have special formulas they've come up with for dissolving haze and fungus in these vintage lenses. You don't need any of that stuff. Just get the actual optical fluid from either Ellipse or from Zeiss, what have you. They work great. I've had no problems whatsoever cleaning with those. So I've seen this lens for 25 bucks and I've seen it for 145 bucks on Etsy. The only difference being maybe the one on Etsy has already had someone clean it. I recommend you just spend the 15 bucks on the lens wrench spanner and clean it yourself. Why in the world would you spend 145 bucks on this lens? I don't know. If you are too afraid to take it apart, I mean, you can get ones for like somewhere in between too, like 60 bucks that may already be very clean. So let's see how this goes, and I'll get back to you on how things work. Maybe I'll eat my words, maybe everything will look like crap, but from previous experience, I know this lens is capable of quite a bit. So yeah, let's see how it goes. Hey there, as promised, here we are at Toronto's Distillery District. They've got the Winter Village going on back here. It's an annual thing that happens. They've also got a huge Christmas tree that happens every year, typically brought to us by Dior, which it is again this year. We were here last night, my partner and I, Marmar, had a really nice time. Got some shots with this. Yes, this is the Tokina 28mm f2.8. I've got a flocked lens hood on it this time. I did notice last night there was a little bit of flaring happening, so I thought I'd throw the lens hood on today. It looks a little bit large, not just because of the lens hood, but also because of the adapter I have on here. This is my Nikon to Sony E-mount adapter, which does make the lens almost twice as long, actually, but still not too bad on my camera. Anyway, let's see how this goes.
I'll start with some of those evening shots first. The distillery is beautiful this time of the year. Here's that tree by Dior. If you're wondering about chromatic aberrations, yes, it's got them. You can see a little bit of purple fringing, but not too bad. The flare I was talking about earlier, this is where it became evident with the overhead lighting. And the colors, quite good. I surprised myself by shooting this long exposure handheld. We have Lite. Not a bad lens for video, I think. Really good color. A very challenging lighting situation here. This shot at f2.8, not crazy background blur, but some separation. This old truck has become sort of ubiquitous amongst YouTubers coming to the distillery district. Of course, I had to shoot it as well. So, for those pixel peepers out there, here's the brick wall test. Here's the corners at f2.8. Not perfectly sharp, but close. And here's the center, where it's very sharp. About a 9 out of 10, I think. I do like myself some Kronenbourg Blanc every once in a while. On the topic of beer, this is my bar at home. This tap handle is only 8.5 inches away. Close focusing distances, not a hallmark of vintage lenses, so impressive.
Hey there, here we are back inside. So what did you think? Not too bad, eh? Yes, so some would say that I should probably be testing these lenses, these vintage lenses, on a full frame camera, and to an extent I agree. I don't have a full frame camera right now. I think in the near future I'll probably be picking up a A7C2. That would be nice. And that camera, I think the look and everything would be ideal for testing out some of these lenses, because none of them would look out of place on an A7C2 in my opinion, or an A7C. I had the A7C, but it would definitely be the A7C2 next, not the CR. I don't need all those megapixels. Currently I only have APS-C cameras. I've got my 6700 as well as an FX30 that I do usually my paid video work with, and I also use it as my talking head camera. It's the one I'm talking to right now. So I haven't got a full frame camera on hand. To tell you the truth, I really wanted to see how these would perform with an APS-C sensor. APS-C sensors have a high pixel density, and they only use the center of these lenses, of course, so the glass has to be very good for them to hold up under the scrutiny of the APS-C sensor. So I should mention something that I did. It's kind of an aesthetic thing as well as a practical thing. Well, of course, another practical thing I did was clean the lens, of course, but there is an actual aesthetic modification I did to this lens, and that was I took the metering tab off of it. What is a metering tab? Some of these older lenses that are Nikon mount had what was called a metering tab. You can see this Chiron lens has this little silver tab here that's made of sheet metal. This is a bit of a pain because it can get stuck to things in your camera bag. It can tear the inside of your camera bag. It can tear your favorite sweater. Some older Nikon cameras had this pin that it would extend from the camera, and it would go through the little hole in this thing called a metering shoe. You don't need this tab unless you've got one of those old Nikon cameras. I'll show you a close-up of what that looks like. By the way, that little shot that I had of the lens turning earlier, you'll see that there's two silver screws that were in the side of this. Those were just the metering tab screws. I took them out to get the metering tab off, and then I put them back in just for aesthetic reasons for that shot. If you put those screws back in, if you put them in all the way, your aperture ring won't turn. It'll lock your aperture ring. So the sheet metal of the metering shoe is thick enough itself that it keeps the screws from going into the lens deep enough to stop the aperture ring from turning. And then the 50 mil that came with the camera, that would have been bundled with the camera, didn't have a metering shoe on it at all because that camera doesn't require one. Third-party lenses, they put it on there in case you happen to be buying the lens for an older Nikon. So as I was mentioning before outside, I was adapting this Nikon mount lens to my a6700 with this. This is my Nikon F mount to E mount adapter. These are only about 15-20 bucks. I buy mine from Fotka on eBay. Fotka is the name of the company that makes them. I've never had any issues with their stuff. You can buy them from anyone. They're very simple. It's just a hollow ring that gives you the exact flange distance, so the distance between the optic in here and your sensor. And of course, it gives you the correct mount on both sides. Nikon, in all their wisdom, made their lens mount counterclockwise rather than clockwise like everyone else. Anyway, so I always have to remember that when I put it back together. So as I also mentioned outside, that when I was shooting with this in the evening, I saw some stray flares hitting that lens element in the front, so I thought I'd give it a little bit of an advantage, a leg up, by using this flocked metal lens hood. Now, flocking is just this fuzzy stuff on the inside to keep it from being reflective, because when you've got a metal lens hood that's got sort of a shiny finish like that, you certainly don't want it shiny on the inside, or you're just going to cause more reflections, right? Anyway, so that screws to the front, so you won't be able to put any filters on the same time you're using this. So when I was talking in front of the camera out at the distillery, that was my new Sigma 10-18. It's one of the few zooms that I own. That lens and my Tamron 70-300 are really the only two zoom lenses that I use. I typically tend to avoid zoom lenses because I prefer fast primes for everything that I do. And although this is a prime, it's not really that fast at 2.8. That's usually where zooms top out. That's part of the reason I avoid zooms, because I like the creative flexibility of going faster than a 2.8. Of course, when you're shooting with a prime, you're limited to the focal length, and when you've got the zoom, you've got the creative flexibility of zooming in or out. So it all depends on the creative flexibility that you want. Do you want the zoom, or do you want the speed? I really enjoyed shooting with this lens, even if it's a 2.8. Now, if I were shooting with a full frame camera at 2.8, I probably would have enjoyed it more. So maybe one day I'll be picking up that A7C II in the future. I still miss my original A7C quite a bit. I loved that camera, and I loved adapting that camera to vintage lenses as well. So as usual, I hope you all got something out of this one. If so, consider leaving me a thumbs up. If not, that's okay too. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of these in the future, please consider subscribing. It would help me a lot. And until next time, keep working to make your chosen idea a reality. Peace.